The Alpha King disguised himself as a beggar to test his pack on Christmas Eve. The Poorest Omega shared her only bread. An original romance by Maggie Reed. Prologue. There are things that break an Omega more than rejection. Nina discovered this the day she was declared too defective to mate by the Council of Elders. 23 years enduring humiliation, being the weakest, the poorest, the one whose Omega scent was so faint it barely registered. The ranking was clear. Dead last. Lower even than the sterile Omegas, because at least they had been born into respectable families. Nina had been born from nothing, and would be nothing until she died. On Christmas Eve, when the entire pack celebrated, when couples danced and pups ran between tables, Nina was alone in her shack at the edge of territory. No food, no fire, no one to notice if she disappeared, except for one loaf of bread, her only bread, saved over weeks. And when the beggar appeared at her door, filthy, shaking with cold, with eyes that seemed to hold storms, Nina did something no one would expect from a disposable Omega. She broke the bread in half and gave him the larger piece. She didn't know that simple gesture would invoke the law of pure gift, ancient magic forgotten that recognized truly generous souls. She didn't know the silver-eyed beggar had tested every wolf in the pack that night, and that only she, the most despised, had passed. And she certainly didn't know the impossible beggar was no beggar at all. He was Dante, the Alpha King of the United Territories, and he hadn't come just to test. He'd come to claim his queen. Chapter 1. The cold cut to the bone. Nina was huddled in the corner of her shack, if it could be called that. 4 walls of rotting wood, a leaking roof, no glass windows, just torn rags to block the wind. The dirt floor was frozen beneath her bare feet. Outside, the pack celebrated Christmas. She could hear the laughter, the music, the smell of roasted food that made her stomach twist with hunger. But Nina hadn't been invited. Never was. Omegas like her, weak, poor, without family, without value, didn't deserve to sit at the table with others. Her hand trembled as she picked up the bread wrapped in clean cloth. It was small, hard at the edges, but it was hers. She'd saved every coin for weeks to buy it from the baker. It would be her only meal for the next few days. She was about to take the first bite when the knock came. Nina froze. No one knocked on her door. No one even knew she existed most of the time. The knock came again, weaker, followed by a raspy cough. Heart racing, Nina stood and opened the door. A man was hunched outside, leaning against the frame. Tattered clothes covered a body far too thin, long hair falling over his face. He was trembling violently, skin pale beneath the grime. A beggar. Or rogue. Maybe both. "Please," his voice came out hoarse, destroyed by cold. "Just a place to rest. Just tonight." Nina should close the door, should scream for help. Rogues were dangerous, unpredictable, but when he lifted his head, his eyes met hers. Gray, like liquid silver under moonlight, and something inside her recognized something in him. Loneliness, desperation, the feeling of being completely alone in the world. "Come in," she heard herself say, stepping aside. The man stumbled inside, and Nina had to catch him before he fell. He was heavy, but she managed to guide him to the only corner that had a thin blanket. "Thank you," he murmured, sinking to the floor. Nina closed the door, her heart still hammering. This was madness. Total madness. But she couldn't just let him freeze to death outside. She looked at the bread in her hand, then at the man who had closed his eyes, shaking so hard his teeth chattered. He probably hadn't eaten in days. Just like her. Nina took a deep breath, and before she could regret it, she broke the bread in half. "Here," she said quietly, extending the larger half. Silver eyes opened, fixing on the bread, then on her face. There was something strange in his expression. Surprise, perhaps, or disbelief. "It's your only bread," he said. Not a question. "You're hungrier than I am," Nina replied, forcing the smaller half back to herself. It wasn't true. Her stomach ached with emptiness. But he looked ready to pass out. "Why?" His voice was low, intense in a way that made her shiver. Nina shrugged, not knowing how to explain. Because I know what hunger feels like. And no one should be alone on Christmas. For a long moment, the man just studied her. Then slowly, he took the bread. "What's your name?" he asked before taking the first bite. "Nina." She sat a few steps away, nibbling her own half. "And you?" "Dante." The name sounded familiar, but Nina couldn't place why. Probably common among rogues. They ate in silence. Nina also shared her only cup of water. When they finished, Dante looked slightly less pale, though still shaking. "You can stay until dawn," Nina said, standing to get the spare blanket, thin, patched, but still a blanket. "But in the morning, you need to leave. If the patrol finds you here, they'll punish you," Dante completed, his jaw tightening. "For sheltering a stranger." Nina nodded, extending the blanket. He took it, but his fingers brushed hers. The sensation was electric. Nina pulled back quickly, her heart racing. Dante had also frozen, looking at his own hand as if she'd burned him. "You're an Omega," he said after a moment. Not a question, but Nina nodded anyway, crossing her arms defensively. "The weakest in the pack, before you ask." "I wasn't going to ask." His silver eyes held her with disturbing intensity. "Strength isn't measured by birth ranking." Nina blinked, caught off guard. No one had ever said anything like that. "You should rest," she murmured, returning to her corner. "I'll stay awake to make sure no one comes." "Nina," Dante called when she started wrapping herself in her own thin blanket. "Yes? Thank you. For your kindness. It won't be forgotten." There was something in the way he said it, a solemnity that seemed disproportionate for a shared piece of bread. But Nina just nodded, turning to give him privacy. She stayed awake for hours, listening to his breathing calm, deepen, and trying to ignore the persistent tingling where their fingers had touched, as if something had awakened, something ancient and powerful, something that shouldn't be possible for a defective Omega like her. When sleep finally overtook her, Nina dreamed of silver eyes and whispered promises, and she would wake to discover her life would never be the same. Chapter 2. Nina woke to sunlight streaming through cracks in the walls. For a disoriented moment, she thought she'd dreamed the entire night. The beggar, the shared bread, those impossible eyes. Then she turned her head. The corner where Dante had slept was empty, the blanket folded with precision, and on top of it, a small leather pouch that definitely hadn't been there before. Nina stood quickly, grabbing the pouch. Heavy. When she opened it, the air left her lungs. Gold coins. At least 20 of them. "No," she whispered, panic rising. "No, no, no." This was too much. Far too much. If anyone discovered she had gold, they'd ask questions. Questions she couldn't answer without admitting she'd sheltered a stranger. She'd be punished. Maybe expelled. Nina's hands shook as she stored the pouch under the loose floorboards, her secret hiding place. She needed to find Dante, return the gold, before anyone discovered. But when she opened the door, Dante was nowhere to be found. And what she found was worse. The entire pack was gathered in the central square. Nina slipped along the side, keeping to the shadows. No one noticed Omegas like her anyway. She managed to get close enough to hear. "A character test," Alpha Thomas was saying, his face red with anger. "A beggar came during Christmas Eve, knocking door to door, asking for food, shelter, anything." Nina's stomach sank. "And all of you," Thomas continued, his voice thundering. "Every single one of you turned him away, slammed doors in his face, spat at him, some even threatened violence." Murmurs began. Confusion, indignation. "Why does that matter?" someone shouted. "He was just a dirty rogue." "He wasn't a rogue." A new voice cut through the air, and Nina saw him emerge from the shadow of the trees. Dante. But he was no longer the filthy, trembling beggar. Now he was clean, wearing dark, elegant clothes that highlighted broad shoulders and a commanding posture. His hair was tied back, revealing a strong jawline and aristocratic features, and those silver eyes swept the crowd like blades. I am Dante Volkov, he said, his voice carrying effortlessly. Alpha King of the United Territories, and I came to test this pack, as I do with all under my domain, to assess whether they're worthy of continuing to exist. The silence was deafening. Nina felt her legs nearly give out. Alpha King. He was the Alpha King. And she had. You failed, Dante continued, each word cutting. Every wolf here showed greed, cruelty, or indifference when confronted with someone in need. And for that, this pack will be placed under review. Your Alpha, he looked at Thomas with disdain, will be replaced. New leaders will be appointed. And you will learn what honor means. Chaos erupted. Screams, protests, some wolves even kneeling in plea. But Dante raised his hand, and everyone fell silent instantly. The power radiating from him was overwhelming. There is one exception, he said, and his eyes began to sweep the crowd. One wolf in this pack showed true kindness, shared her only food, offered shelter without asking for anything in return, and in doing so, invoked the law of pure gift, ancient magic that recognizes noble souls. Nina couldn't breathe. He couldn't. Nina, Dante called, his voice softening only marginally. Where are you? Everyone turned, searching. Nina wanted to disappear, sink into the earth. But Dante's eyes found her through the crowd, and there was something in that look. Something that made her take a step forward. Then another. The crowd parted like a divided sea, wolves moving away from her with expressions of shock. Nina walked on trembling legs until she stopped a few feet from Dante. It's her, someone whispered. The defective Omega. She sheltered the king. Impossible. Why would he— Silence, Dante cut off, not taking his eyes from Nina. Then, to everyone's complete shock, he knelt before her. Nina, he said, his voice low but charged with power. You showed me kindness when no one else would, shared when you had nothing, and in doing so, activated a law that hasn't been invoked in centuries. He extended his hand, and Nina saw something gleaming in his palm. A mark, like an ancient seal, burning with silver light. The law of pure gift recognizes soulmates through selfless acts. And you, little Omega that the world discarded, are mine. The world spun. Nina felt burning in her chest, directly over her heart. When she looked down, she saw light shining through her shirt, the same silver seal mirroring his. No, she whispered. This can't. I'm not. You are, Dante said, standing. And now he was so close she had to tilt her head completely back. You are my true queen, my mate, chosen not by blind fate, but by who you are in essence. Tears burned in Nina's eyes. I'm nobody. You are everything. He raised his hand, hesitated. May I? Nina didn't know what she was agreeing to, but nodded. Gentle fingers touched her face, and the sensation was 1,000 times more intense than last night. Heat exploded where he touched, spreading, warming parts of her that had been frozen for so long. Come with me, Dante murmured. Leave this place that never valued you. Come to the castle of the United Territories. Take your place at my side. As queen. As my equal. I don't know how to be queen, Nina whispered, aware of every pair of eyes fixed on them. Then I'll teach you. A smile touched his lips. But something tells me you already know. Because royalty isn't about blood or titles. It's about character. And yours, Nina, is pure gold. Before she could respond, before she could process that her entire life was changing in that moment, Alpha Thomas lunged forward. Wait, he shouted. You can't just take her. She belongs to this pack. Dante turned slowly, and the power that emanated from him made several wolves step back. She belongs to no one but herself, he said, voice low and dangerous, and definitely not to a pack that treated her like garbage. Do you have anything to say about that? Thomas paled, but his stubbornness won. She's just a defective Omega, weak, worthless. Why would the king of the United Territories— He didn't finish the sentence, because Dante had moved, so fast Nina barely saw, and had his hand wrapped around Thomas's throat, lifting him off the ground. "Repeat what you called my queen," Dante growled, his eyes glowing with inhuman light. "I dare you." Thomas was choking, claws failing uselessly against Dante's grip. "Dante," Nina heard herself say. "Please. He's not worth it." Immediately, Dante released Thomas, who fell to his knees, coughing. But when Dante turned back to Nina, his eyes had softened. "You're right," he said. "He's not worth even your breath." Then to the crowd, "This pack has 3 days to reorganize. If there's no improvement, it will be dissolved. Understood?" Hasty nods. Murmurs of agreement. Dante returned his attention to Nina, extending his hand again. "Ready?" Nina looked at the only home she'd ever known, at the pack that had despised her, at the life of loneliness and hunger and humiliation. Then she looked at those silver eyes and saw promise, choice, possibility. Slowly, she placed her hand in his, and when strong fingers closed around hers, when warmth traveled up her arm and settled in her chest, Nina knew. Her life of nothing had ended, and something impossible was just beginning. Chapter 3. The journey to the Castle of the United Territories took 2 days. Nina traveled in a luxurious carriage that felt like a small mobile room, cushioned seats, soft blankets, windows with velvet curtains. Dante rode alongside, leading an escort of 20 warriors who treated her with reverence that made her uncomfortable. She was nobody. How could they look at her as if she were important? On the first night, they camped in a clearing. Nina stayed in her tent, also absurdly luxurious, trying to process everything. Her entire life had turned upside down in a matter of hours. A gentle knock on the canvas made her jump. "Come in," she said, expecting one of the maids. Dante entered, bending slightly to pass through the entrance. Even in simple traveling clothes, he was striking. Tall, broad shoulders filling the dark shirt, those silver eyes that seemed to see through her. "I came to see if you're comfortable," he said, stopping at a respectful distance. "I am," Nina responded automatically. Then, because she couldn't hold back. "Why?" Dante tilted his head. "Why what? Why all this?" She gestured to the tent, to the luxury around her. "Why me? You're the king of the United Territories. You could have any Omega, anyone who was more. And instead you chose the weakest, the poorest, the one nobody wants." Something painful crossed his eyes. Dante took a step forward, then stopped, as if fighting with himself. "May I sit?" he asked, indicating the space near her. Nina nodded, and he sat, not too close, but close enough that she felt the heat radiating from him. "The law of pure gift," Dante began, his voice low, "isn't just about generosity. It's about souls. When you gave me that bread, when you shared the little you had without asking for anything in return, your soul revealed itself. Pure, kind, selfless." He looked at his own hands. "I've been searching for someone like that my entire life. Searching for a mate who wouldn't want me for power, for title, for wealth, but for who I am beyond the crown." "But I didn't even know who you were," Nina whispered. "Exactly." His eyes met hers, and there was something raw in them. "You saw me as just another wolf in need, and still you helped me. That, Nina, is rarer than you imagine, especially among royalty." He leaned slightly closer, and the seal over Nina's heart warmed. "You ask why I chose you? Because you're the only person in all my years who treated me like just Dante. Not the king, not the legend, just a wolf who was cold and hungry and needed kindness." Tears burned in Nina's eyes. "I still don't understand. I'm weak. My Omega scent barely exists. I can't even—" "Stop." Dante's voice was firm but gentle. "Stop repeating the lies others told you. Your Omega scent is perfect, subtle, like snowflowers. Your strength isn't physical, but that doesn't make it less valuable. And as for not being able to—" He hesitated, then reached for her hand. Slowly, giving her time to pull back. When Nina didn't move, warm fingers wrapped around hers. The sensation was electric. The seal glowed beneath both their clothes, pulsing in sync. "You can," Dante said quietly. You survived years of neglect and cruelty. Kept your kindness when it would have been easier to harden your heart. That, little Nina, is the greatest strength that exists." Nina couldn't look away. There was so much sincerity in his eyes, so much admiration, as if she were something precious. "I'm afraid," she admitted in a whisper. "Afraid of not being what you need, of disappointing you, of waking up one day and realizing you made a mistake." Dante's free hand rose, gently brushing her face. The touch sent shivers down her spine. "The only mistake I made," he murmured, "was not finding you sooner. And as for disappointing me, Nina, just being you is already more than I deserve." "How can you say that? You're a king. And you are my queen, my equal, my chosen one." His eyes held hers with breathtaking intensity. "And I will spend every day proving that you deserve every privilege, every luxury, every moment of happiness this life can offer." Before Nina could respond, Dante stood gently. "Rest. Tomorrow we'll arrive at the castle, and there will be much to process." He turned to leave, then looked over his shoulder. "And Nina, thank you for giving me a chance. I know it wasn't an easy choice." After he left, Nina sat for a long time, holding the hand he'd touched against her chest. The seal still pulsed warmly. And for the first time in her life, Nina allowed herself to believe, maybe, just maybe, she was enough. Chapter 4. The Castle of the United Territories was impossible. Nina stopped at the entrance, mouth open, as the structure rose before her. White stone towers that seemed to touch the clouds. Lush gardens even in winter. Flags fluttering in the wind, each bearing the symbol of the silver wolf. "It's enormous," she whispered. "It's home," Dante said beside her, his hand resting gently on her back. "You're home now." Guards bowed as they passed. Servants stopped to watch, murmurs following their passage. Nina wanted to shrink, disappear, but Dante's presence at her side was anchoring. He guided her through corridors with rich tapestries, marble staircases, halls that could house her entire pack. Finally, they stopped before ornate double doors. "Your chambers," Dante said, pushing the doors open. Nina entered and her heart stopped. The suite was larger than her entire previous house. Enormous canopy bed covered in blue and silver silks. Crackling fireplace. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking snow-covered mountains. A bookshelf filled with books. And through another door, she glimpsed a bathroom with a marble tub. "This can't be for me," she said, spinning to face Dante. "It is." He entered but stopped near the door, as if respecting her space. "And before you protest, you are my queen. These are the queen's chambers. They've always been reserved for you." "But Nina." Dante crossed the room in 3 steps. "You need to stop diminishing yourself. I know years of abuse made you believe you don't deserve anything good, but that ends now. Here, you are valued, respected, loved." The last word came out softer, almost hesitant. Nina felt heat rise in her face. "You don't even know me." "Not yet," Dante agreed. "But I want to know. Every part of you. Every thought. Every dream. Every fear." He paused, so close now she had to tilt her head back. "If you'll let me." There was an unspoken question in his silver eyes. Permission. Choice. "I want to try," Nina heard herself say. "To know you too. To understand this." She touched the seal over her heart, which pulsed warmly. The smile that lit Dante's face was devastating. "That's all I ask." A knock on the door interrupted them. A woman entered, middle-aged, elegant posture, elaborate dress. Her eyes widened when she saw Nina. "My king," she said, bowing. "The news is true, then. You've found your queen." "Yes." Dante turned to Nina, pride obvious in his voice. "Nina, this is Margaret, chief administrator of the castle. She'll help you adjust." Margaret approached, and Nina braced instinctively for judgment, for the look of contempt she always received. Instead, Margaret smiled warmly. "Welcome, Your Majesty. It's an honor to finally have a queen in these halls." She looked at Dante. "I've prepared everything as you instructed. The wardrobe is complete?" The bath is being drawn, and dinner will be served in an hour. Perfect. Thank you, Margaret. Dante looked at Nina. I'll leave you to settle in. But may I see you at dinner? It wasn't a demand. It was a request. Yes, Nina said, and something warmed in her chest when she saw the relief in his eyes. After Dante left, Margaret moved with impressive efficiency, showed Nina the wardrobe, filled with dresses, casual clothes, everything in tones that complemented her pale skin, helped her prepare a bath in the absurdly large tub. Take your time, Margaret said gently. I know you must be overwhelmed, but know this, King Dante is a good man, the best. And the way he looks at you, she smiled. I've never seen anything like it. After Margaret left, Nina sank into the steaming bath. The water was scented with lavender, and for the first time in ever, she wasn't cold. She cried then, not from sadness, but from relief so intense she couldn't contain it. Years of pain, of rejection, of hunger and loneliness, all rising to the surface. And when she finished crying, when the water had cooled and her fingers were wrinkled, Nina felt lighter, as if she'd let go of a weight she'd carried for so long. She dressed in one of the simple dresses, dark blue, comfortable, but elegant. Margaret had left a maid to help with her hair, braiding it in a way Nina could never manage alone. When she looked in the mirror, she barely recognized herself. She was clean, fed, dressed like someone important. She looked like a queen. The maid guided her through the castle to a smaller hall, more intimate than the great hall they'd passed before. A table was set for two, candles lit, food that made Nina's stomach growl traitorously. Dante was already there, standing near the window. He'd changed from traveling clothes to something more formal, white shirt, dark vest, pants that accentuated his physique. His hair was loose, falling over his shoulders. He turned when she entered and froze. Nina, he breathed, crossing the space between them. You're stunning. Heat rose in her face. It's just a dress. No. He stopped before her, and there was raw admiration in his eyes. It's you. Finally seeing you as you should always have been seen. Cared for. Valued. Beautiful. Nina didn't know what to say. No one had ever called her beautiful. Dante offered his arm. Shall we eat? You must be starving. They dined while talking. Dante asked questions about her childhood, her dreams, what she liked to do. Nina, hesitant at first, found herself opening up, telling him about her love of books, even though she'd never had access to many. About how she used to watch the stars and imagine there was a place where she belonged. You belong here, Dante said softly. With me. When they finished, he guided her to the balcony connected to the hall. The night sky was clear, stars shining like diamonds. Nina, Dante said after a moment of comfortable silence, there's something I need to explain. About the law of pure gift. About what it means for us. Her heart accelerated. What? The law creates a bond between soulmates. But like all mate bonds, it requires 3 rituals to complete. His eyes held hers. The first already happened, the recognition through the act of pure generosity. And the other 2? The second is mutual acceptance. It's when we both publicly declare our bond before witnesses. It's making it official. He hesitated. Usually happens in a ceremony. Like a wedding, Nina whispered. Yes, but only when you're ready. There's no rush. And the third ritual? Dante's eyes darkened slightly. Consummation. When we unite completely, body, soul, destiny intertwined. It's the final ritual that makes the bond unbreakable. Nina understood the implication. Heat rose in her face, but she forced herself to ask, and if I don't want to complete the rituals? Pain crossed his face, but his voice remained calm. Then we don't complete them. You will always, always have choice, Nina. I would never force you into anything. Even if it hurt you? Even then. He raised his hand, gently brushing her face. Your happiness, your comfort, is worth more than anything. Nina looked into those silver eyes and saw absolute truth. This man, this powerful king, was placing himself completely at her mercy. I want to try, she said softly. to know you, to understand this bond, and then decide. Is that okay? The smile Dante gave her lit up the night. It's perfect. And when he kissed her forehead, gentle, reverent, the seal over Nina's heart sang. Chapter 5. The following days were surreal. Nina woke in a soft bed with breakfast waiting. Margaret guided her through lessons about court etiquette, history of the United Territories, expectations of a queen. It was overwhelming, but the older woman was patient. You don't need to know everything now, Margaret would say whenever Nina started to panic. You have time, and the king would never allow you to be thrown to the wolves. Literally, Nina thought with an involuntary smile. Dante appeared at different times of the day, sometimes for lunch together, sometimes just to walk through the gardens. He never imposed himself, always asking permission, always respecting space, and each interaction deepened something inside Nina, curiosity becoming affection, affection becoming something warmer. On the fourth morning, a maid came with news. Your Majesty, there's a she-wolf requesting audience. She says she's from your old pack. Nina's stomach sank. Who? She identified herself as Clara. Said you were friends? Clara, the only she-wolf who sometimes showed something resembling kindness, though never enough to actually help. I'll receive her, Nina decided. They met in one of the smaller halls. Clara entered, eyes wide as she absorbed the opulence. When she saw Nina, dressed in queen's clothes, clean, obviously well-fed, her mouth opened. Nina, is it really you? It's me. Nina gestured to a chair. Why are you here, Clara? The other Omega sat, wringing her hands. I came to apologize. For never being a true friend. For letting the others treat you so badly. I was afraid that if I stood by your side, they'd do the same to me. Brutal honesty. Nina appreciated that. I understand, she said softly. Survival is difficult when you're vulnerable too. But you survived anyway, and now? Clara looked around. You're queen. The mate of the most powerful king. How? Nina touched the seal over her heart. An act of kindness. That's all it was. Nothing magical beyond being myself. The rest of the pack is in chaos, Clara said. Alpha Thomas was deposed. A new leader was appointed, someone King Dante chose. And there are rumors that you'll return to get revenge? Revenge? Nina blinked. Why would I do that? Because they treated you terribly. You'd have every right. Nina was silent, processing. There was a part of her, small and wounded, that wanted revenge. Wanted to see them suffer as she'd suffered. But a larger part, the part Dante seemed to see and value, didn't want that. Just wanted to move forward. I won't seek revenge, she said finally. But I won't go back either. That place was never my home. Here I have a chance to find where I belong. Tears shone in Clara's eyes. You were always too strong for us, weren't you? We just couldn't see it. After Clara left, Nina sat alone, processing the conversation. Then a familiar presence made her look up. Dante was in the doorway, watching her. I heard you had a visitor, he said, entering. Was everything okay? Yes. Just closure, I guess. Nina stood. Dante, can I ask you something? Anything. Why do you really do the tests? Disguising yourself as a beggar? He approached, sitting in the chair Clara had occupied. Because power corrupts. And I need to know that the alphas under my command lead with compassion, not just strength. The test reveals true character. And if everyone failed, like in my pack, then I'd replace them with wolves who passed. Leadership is privilege, not right. And those who lead must serve, not just command. His eyes held hers. That's why I know you'll be a perfect queen. Nina shook her head. I don't know anything about leading, but you know about serving, about sacrifice, about putting others before yourself. Dante leaned forward. Those are the qualities of a true leader. The rest, etiquette, politics, strategy, can be taught. Before Nina could respond, urgency in the air made them turn. A warrior entered, bowing quickly. Majesty, sorry for the interruption, but there's a situation. Alpha Mikhail of the Northern Territories requests urgent audience. Dante's body tensed. Mikhail? He never comes personally unless it's serious. He says it's about the queen, the warrior continued, casting a worried look at Nina, about questioning the legitimacy of the bond. Ice ran through Nina's veins. What does that mean? Dante stood, jaw locked. It means we have trouble. Chapter 6. The Great Hall was tense. Nina sat beside Dante on the throne. A second throne had been placed for her, equal to his in size and grandeur. Dante had insisted. You are my equal, he'd said as they prepared. And everyone will see that. Now, watching Alpha Mikhail enter, a huge man with scars tearing half his face and eyes cold as ice, Nina felt tiny. King Dante, Mikhail said, bowing, but there was disrespect in the casual manner. I heard interesting rumors that you've finally chosen a queen. I didn't choose, Dante corrected, his voice cold. The law of pure gift chose her, as I recognized her as my true mate. Ah, yes, the ancient law. Mikhail smiled, but there was no warmth. Convenient, isn't it? Using a law no one really understands to elevate an omega. What was your ranking again, dear? The question was directed at Nina, with poorly disguised contempt. Last, Nina answered, keeping her voice steady despite the internal trembling. I was considered the weakest. The weakest, Mikhail repeated, as if proving a point. And now supposedly Queen of the United Territories. Forgive my skepticism, but this seems fraudulent. The air in the room chilled. Power emanated from Dante in almost visible waves. Careful, he said quietly, dangerously, with your next words. But Mikhail wasn't easily intimidated. I demand proof. The law of pure gift requires 3 rituals. How many have been completed? Only the first, Dante admitted reluctantly. The recognition. Then the bond is incomplete. Unofficial. Mikhail turned to the other alphas gathered. Nina hadn't noticed. But the room was filled with leaders from different territories. And according to law, an incomplete bond can be challenged. Nina felt her blood freeze. Challenged? It's ancient but valid, another alpha said, this one older. Any wolf can challenge an incomplete bond, especially when it involves the position of queen. This is absurd, Dante growled, standing. Nina is my mate. The seal doesn't lie. Then complete the rituals, Mikhail challenged. Here. Now. Prove the bond is true. Heavy silence fell. Nina looked at Dante and saw conflict in his eyes. He wanted to complete the rituals. She could feel it through the seal, the desire pulsing between them. But not like this. Not forced. Not without her being ready. No, Dante said finally. Nina won't be pressured. The rituals will happen when she chooses, not when others demand. Then accept that her legitimacy will be questioned, Mikhail said. And some of us may decide she's not suitable. You don't have that right, Dante began, but Nina touched his arm. He looked down, surprised. Nina stood, heart hammering, but keeping her head high. You want proof? She said, her voice carrying stronger than expected. Want to know if I deserve to be here? Nina, no, Dante murmured. You don't need to prove anything. But I do. She looked at Mikhail. Not for them. For myself. She turned to the room full of alphas, betas, warriors, all watching her with barely hidden skepticism. You're right. I was the weakest. The poorest. The one nobody wanted. Her voice didn't tremble. But strength isn't just physical. And value doesn't come from ranking or wealth. She touched the seal over her heart. Dante found me because I did what was right, not what was easy. I gave when I had nothing. Showed kindness when it would have been simpler to close the door. Her eyes swept the faces. How many of you would have done the same? How many would choose compassion over self-preservation? Murmurs. Some embarrassed looks. The law of pure gift chose me not despite my weaknesses, but because of my character. And if you can't see value in that, she straightened her shoulders, then the problem isn't me. It's you. Absolute silence. Then slowly, the older alpha began to clap. Others followed. Not all. Mikhail remained with arms crossed, face severe. But enough. Dante pulled her back to sit, and when he whispered in her ear, there was clear admiration. "You are magnificent." But Mikhail wasn't finished. "Pretty words," he said, "but they don't change facts. The bond is incomplete, and according to ancient law, any alpha can issue a suitor's challenge." Nina felt Dante go rigid. "You wouldn't dare." "I dare." Mikhail stepped forward. "Nina, former last Omega of the South Pack, I, Alpha Mikhail of the Northern Territories, issue a suitor's challenge. I claim my right to compete for you." The room exploded in chaos. Shouts, shock, some supporting, others protesting. Nina couldn't breathe. Suitor's challenge, she knew that term. It was ancient, brutal. It meant combat, fight to death or surrender. "I accept," Dante said, his voice cutting through the noise. Cold, lethal. "And when I win, you'll publicly retract." "If you win," Mikhail corrected with a sharp smile. After everyone left, Nina found herself alone with Dante in her chambers. He paced like a caged animal, rage radiating from him in waves. "That bastard," he growled. "Using ancient laws to force—" "Dante!" Nina touched his arm, and he stopped immediately. "What does this mean? Suitor's challenge?" He turned, and there was pain in his eyes. "It means Mikhail will fight me. The winner gets you." Nina swallowed hard. "And if he wins?" "He won't." But there was tension in his jaw. "But if he did, you'd be forced to accept a bond with him. It's the law." Horror froze her veins. To be forced into another bond with a man who saw her as a prize. "I won't let that happen," Dante promised, pulling her close. "I swear, Nina, I will protect you." And as she nestled against his chest, feeling his heart beat strong, Nina realized something. She didn't want Dante to fight just out of duty or law. She wanted him to fight because she was his, as he was hers. Chapter 7. The challenge would be in 3 days. Nina spent that time learning more about Mikhail. He was powerful, brutal, known for never losing a fight. He'd killed at least a dozen opponents in previous challenges. "Why is he doing this?" she asked Margaret while preparing for another lesson. The older woman sighed. "Power. If he gets you, he gains legitimacy. A queen chosen by the law of pure gift would give him the right to question Dante's rule. So I'm just a political piece." "To him?" "Yes." Margaret touched her shoulder gently. "But to Dante, you're everything." On the second night, unable to sleep, Nina went out to walk. She found herself in the gardens, under the stars. "Can't sleep either?" She turned to find Dante emerging from the shadows. He was in simple training clothes, sweat gleaming on his skin. Obviously, he'd been practicing. "I was thinking," Nina admitted when he approached. About the challenge. About what happens after, regardless of who wins." Dante stopped a few steps away, studying her. "What do you mean?" Nina took a deep breath. "If you win, Mikhail will retract, but others will come. Others will question, because our bond is incomplete." "Nina, what if we completed it?" The words came out before she could stop them. "The rituals. The second one. Mutual acceptance. We'd make it official. Then no one could question." Dante crossed the distance between them in 2 steps. "Are you offering this as strategy? As politics?" "I'm offering it because I want to." Nina raised her eyes to meet his. "Because these last few days, knowing you, being treated like someone important, I don't want to lose this. I don't want to lose you." Something blazed in his silver eyes. "Nina, you'll never lose me. But marrying me just to satisfy others, it's not just for that." She placed her hand on his chest, feeling his heart hammer. "It's because when I'm with you, I don't feel weak. I feel seen, valued, like I'm finally home." Tears burned in her eyes. "Is it too soon? Too fast?" "Maybe. But Dante, I want this. I want to be your queen. Not because a law said so, but because I choose you." For a moment, Dante didn't move. Then his hands framed her face, thumbs wiping away tears she hadn't even realized were falling. "Are you sure?" His voice was hoarse. "Because once we complete the second ritual, there's no going back. You'll be mine before everyone, and I'll take that seriously, Nina. Every promise, every vow. I know. She covered his hands with hers. And I'm sure. The kiss came gentle at first, Dante leaning down, lips brushing hers with reverence. But when Nina sighed against his mouth, he deepened it. Heat exploded between them. The seal over their hearts glowed through their clothes, pulsing in sync. Dante's hands slid to her waist, pulling her closer, while Nina's arms wrapped around his neck. When they finally separated, both breathless, Dante pressed his forehead to hers. Tomorrow, he promised. Before the challenge. We complete the second ritual. Before everyone. And then Mikhail will know he's already lost. The next morning, the castle was in frenzy. A ceremony being prepared in hours. Margaret commanding armies of servants, decorating the great hall. Nina being dressed in a gown that took her breath away. Silver white, embroidered with threads that seemed to capture starlight. You look like a true queen, Margaret said with tears in her eyes. When Nina descended to the great hall, hundreds of wolves were gathered. They all rose when she entered. And at the end of the aisle, waiting near a makeshift altar, stood Dante. He wore formal robes, all black with silver details, a simple crown on his head. But it was his eyes that captured Nina. Those silver eyes that first saw her when she had nothing, that looked at her now as if she were the most precious thing in the world. Nina walked to him on trembling legs. When she reached the altar, Dante took her hands. Nina, he said, voice carrying through the silence. You taught me that strength comes from kindness. That value is in character, not in power. You saw me as just a wolf who was cold and hungry, and you gave me warmth, gave me hope. His thumbs caressed her hands. Before everyone here, I claim you as my queen, my mate, my chosen one, not by law or fate, but by free choice. Do you accept? Tears flowed freely down Nina's face. Yes. She took a deep breath, finding courage. Dante, you showed me that I deserve to be seen, to be valued. You transformed my life from survival into true living. Her voice trembled but didn't break. Before everyone here, I claim you as my king, my mate, my chosen one, by free choice. Do you accept? The smile that lit Dante's face could have illuminated the entire kingdom. Yes. And when he kissed her, the seal over their hearts exploded in brilliant light. Liquid silver radiating, visible to all, filling the hall. The second ritual was complete. Nina was officially queen, and tomorrow, Dante would fight to defend her. Chapter 8. Dawn came cold and clear. Nina stood on the balcony of her chambers, watching the sun rise over the mountains. Today was the challenge. Today, Dante would fight Mikhail. Today, everything could change. Strong arms wrapped around her from behind, pulling her against a warm chest. Dante had spent the night in her chambers, not in the complete physical sense, but simply holding her while they slept. Comforting presence, anchoring. Ready? He murmured against her hair. I'm terrified, Nina admitted. What if something goes wrong? What if Mikhail? He won't. Dante turned her in his arms, forcing her to look at him. I won't lose you, Nina. I fought too long to find you. I won't let anyone take you from me. But he's strong, brutal. And you, I'm stronger. It wasn't arrogance, it was fact. And I have something to fight for that he'll never have. True love, true choice. That gives me power he'll never understand. The word love made Nina's heart skip. They hadn't used that word yet. But it was there, pulsing between them through the seal, undeniable. The challenge would be held in the arena, an open space in the center of the castle, surrounded by stands. When Nina arrived, guided by Margaret, it was already packed. She was placed in an elevated area, protected but with a clear view. Dante was below, near the arena entrance, talking quietly with his warriors. Mikhail was on the opposite side, alone, smiling with cruel confidence. An elder climbed the central platform. Gathered witnesses, he announced. We are here for the Suitors' Challenge. Alpha Mikhail of the Northern Territories versus King Dante of the United Territories. Fight to surrender or death. May the gods bless the righteous. Nina felt bile rise. Death, the word echoed. Dante and Mikhail entered the arena. For a moment, they just stared at each other, power emanating from both, the air practically vibrating. Then Mikhail attacked. The transformation was instantaneous. A huge wolf, black fur, fangs like daggers, launched forward. Dante transformed mid-leap. His wolf was larger, silver fur gleaming in the sun. When the two collided, the impact shook the ground. The fight was brutal. Mikhail was fast, cruel, targeting vital points. But Dante was stronger, each movement precise, centuries of experience guiding him. Blood stained the earth. Nina couldn't tell whose. Mikhail managed to sink fangs into Dante's shoulder. The howl of pain made Nina's heart stop, but Dante didn't yield, using the momentum to throw Mikhail against the arena wall. They transformed back to human for moments, exchanging bare-handed blows. Both faces were bloodied, clothes torn. "Give up," Dante growled, "and I'll spare your life." "Never," Mikhail spat blood. "She'll be mine, and your kingdom will fall." They clashed again, transforming and flying. Claws ripped, fangs flashed. Nina had her hands over her mouth, tears streaming. Each wound on Dante hurt her, the seal transmitting his pain. Then Mikhail made a mistake. He aimed for Nina. Leaping toward the stands, clearly intending to force Dante to choose between defending himself and protecting her. But Dante was faster. He intercepted Mikhail mid-air, both colliding with devastating force. When they stopped rolling, Dante was on top of Mikhail, fangs at the other alpha's throat. "Surrender," Dante ordered, pressure increasing. Mikhail struggled, but was pinned. Blood dripped where Dante's fangs penetrated skin. "Surrender," Mikhail finally gasped. Dante released him immediately, stepping back. He transformed back to human, standing tall despite bleeding wounds. "Retract," he commanded, "or I finish this." Mikhail transformed back, kneeling, defeated. Hatred burned in his eyes, but he had no choice. "I retract," he spat. "The bond between you and Nina is legitimate, and she is the true queen." Silence. Then the arena exploded in roars of approval. Nina ran, decorum forgotten, jumping from the stands and running to Dante. He caught her when she launched into his arms, spinning her. "You're hurt!" she cried, touching wounds with trembling hands. "I'm alive, and you're mine." He kissed her, hard and possessive and perfect. Officially, undisputedly, mine. The healers took Dante to treat his wounds. Nina refused to leave him, sitting beside him while they stitched cuts and bandaged claw burns. "You were stupid," she murmured, holding his hand. "You could have died. But I didn't," he squeezed back, "because I had you to come back to." That night, after all wounds were treated, after celebrations had been held, Dante and Nina found themselves alone in their chambers. "Nina," Dante said, pulling her into his lap as he sat by the fireplace. "There's something I need to say." She nestled against him, careful of his wounds. "What?" "I love you." Simple. Direct. Not by law or fate, but because you're you. Kind, strong, braver than you know, and I'll spend every remaining day proving it. Nina looked at him through tears. "I love you too, and I was so terrified of losing you today." "You never will." He kissed her forehead. "We're one now. Official. Undeniable." Nina hesitated, then said quietly, "The third ritual." Dante's body tensed. "Nina, there's no rush. You don't need to." "I want to." She looked up, meeting those silver eyes. "Complete everything. Make our bond unbreakable." "Not today," she hurried. "You're hurt, but soon." The expression on Dante's face was a mix of desire and adoration. "Are you sure?" "Absolutely." And when he kissed her, slow and deep, the seal between them sang. Soon their bond would be complete. Chapter 9. A week passed. Dante's wounds healed. Life in the castle settled into a comfortable rhythm. Nina took on queen's duties, meetings with counselors, minor judgments, charity for the needy, and she discovered she was good at it. "You have natural instinct," Margaret commented after Nina resolved a dispute between two families with balanced justice. "I just think about what I would have wanted when I had no one." Nina had replied. But at night, when she was alone with Dante, tension grew. The third ritual, unspoken, hovering between them. He never pressured, but Nina could feel his desire through the seal, and found it was reciprocated. On the 8th night since the challenge, Nina made a decision. She found Dante in his study, reviewing documents under candlelight. Working late, she observed from the doorway. He looked up, an immediate smile lighting his face. There's always more to do when you lead so many territories. But I always have time for you. Nina entered, closing the door behind her. Locking it, Dante noticed, his eyes following the movement. Tension shifted the air. Nina? She approached, heart hammering, but steps firm. She stopped before his desk, forcing him to tilt his head back to look at her. I'm ready, she said simply. Dante went absolutely still. Ready for the third ritual. Consummation. Nina extended her hand. I'm ready to complete our bond. To make it unbreakable. He stood so fast the chair fell backward. But he didn't touch her. Fists clenched at his sides as if fighting himself. Nina, are you sure? Because once we complete it, there's no going back. You'll be mine in every way. And I'll be yours. Completely. Eternally. I know. She took another step closer. And I want this. I want you. Not because a law said so. Not because I'm your queen. But because I love you, Dante. And I trust you. Completely. Something broke in his expression. Carefully maintained control shattering. In 2 steps, he had her in his arms, mouth taking hers with hunger he'd been holding back for weeks. Nina sighed against his lips, melting into him. Dante's hands traveled down her back, her waist, as if memorizing every curve. When they separated, both breathless, his eyes were glowing silver. My room, he said, voice hoarse. Where there's more space, more comfort, where I can do this right. He picked her up before she could respond, carrying her through the castle. Guards who saw discreetly looked away, understanding smiles. Dante's chambers were larger than hers, decorated in dark tones of gray and silver. The bed was enormous, covered in black silks. Dante placed her gently on it, but didn't immediately follow. Instead, he stood, just looking. You're so beautiful, he whispered. So perfectly mine. Nina extended her hand. Then come. Claim what's yours, as I claim you. And when he finally lay over her, when their mouths met again and hands began exploring heated skin, the seal over their hearts began to glow, softly at first, then more intense. Silver light filling the room as the bond between them deepened, intertwined, became indestructible. Nina felt the exact moment they crossed the threshold, when their bodies joined and something inside her leapt, completing a circuit that had been waiting. Minimal pain, quickly drowned in pleasure and connection so deep she didn't know where she ended, and he began. Mine. Dante growled against her neck, lips finding the spot where a permanent mark would be placed. My queen, my mate, my life. Yours, Nina gasped, nails scratching his back, pulling him closer, deeper. Always yours, as you're mine, my king, my love, my everything. And when he bit, fangs piercing skin at the sacred spot between neck and shoulder, the pain was eclipsed by ecstasy, the permanent mark burning, sealing, claiming. Nina bit back, her smaller omega canines still leaving a mark that declared him as hers, ownership working both ways. The seal over their hearts exploded in blinding light. And then everything merged. Sensation, emotion, souls intertwining until there was no more separate Dante and Nina. Just them. United, complete, eternal. When they finally sank back to reality, entangled and breathless, the mark on their necks pulsed with soft light. You feel it? Dante murmured, kissing her face, her eyes, her lips. The bond, complete, unbreakable. Nina felt it. Through the seal, through the mark, she could feel his emotions. Love, adoration, deep satisfaction, and knew he felt hers too. I feel it, she whispered. I feel you, All of you. He pulled her closer, wrapping her completely. You'll never be alone again. Never feel worthless again. Because you carry my soul now. And it adores you. Tears streamed down Nina's face, but they were tears of joy. I love you. I love you. He kissed every tear. My queen. My mate. My Nina. They stayed entwined until dawn painted the sky rose and gold. And when they finally slept, it was with absolute certainty. The bond was complete. And nothing, no one, would ever separate them. Chapter 10. 2 years later. Nina stood on the castle balcony, watching children play in the gardens below. Not their pups. She and Dante had accepted that biological children might never come, but children of the heart, orphans who had been brought to the castle, fed, educated, loved. Children Nina understood because she herself had been discarded. And now, as queen, she could give them what she never had. Home. Family. Belonging. You're going to spoil them so much they won't want to leave, the familiar voice said behind her. Nina smiled, turning into Dante's arms. He pulled her against his chest, chin resting on top of her head. Good, she responded. Then we'll always have a full house. The castle had changed in the last 2 years. Once cold and formal, now it overflowed with life. Laughter echoed through corridors. Meals were communal events. And Nina, the Omega who'd been considered worthless, was loved by all. I received news from the South Pack, Dante said after a moment. They've prospered under new leadership, and they've asked us to visit. Nina was quiet. She hadn't returned since she left. Part of her didn't want to, fear of reliving old pains. Do you want to go? Dante asked gently. Always giving choice. Maybe, Nina said slowly. Not to get revenge, but to show other Omegas like me, the despised, the forgotten, that there's hope, that they can be more than others said. Pride warmed through the bond. You're incredible, you know that? Nina turned in his arms, rising on tiptoes to kiss him. Soft, sweet, full of love that had grown from recognition to deep adoration. I learned from the best, she murmured against his lips. That night, during dinner in the great hall, the huge table filled with wolves of all rankings, all eating together, one of the youngest orphans climbed into Nina's lap. Queen Nina, the girl said shyly. Is it true? That you were poor once too? Silence fell. Everyone watching. Nina hugged the girl gently. It's true. I had less than nothing. Lived in a shack that leaked, had only one loaf of bread that had to last days. And then you met the king? The girl's eyes sparkled. Then I met the king, Nina confirmed, looking at Dante across the table. He watched with a soft expression. But he didn't save me. I saved myself. By choosing kindness when it would have been easier to close my heart. By choosing to give when I had nothing. By choosing to believe I deserved more. She kissed the top of the girl's head. And you deserve more too. All of you. It doesn't matter where you came from. It doesn't matter what others said. You have value. And you'll always have a home here. Applause echoed. Not formal, but genuine. Warm. Later, when the children were sleeping and the castle quiet, Nina and Dante walked through the gardens under stars. Do you regret it? Dante asked suddenly. The life you could have had? Simpler, maybe. Without the responsibilities of ruling? Nina stopped, pulling him to face her. How could I regret it? You gave me everything. Love. Purpose. A chance to make a difference. You gave me everything, too, he said, touching her face with tenderness that still made her heart skip. You taught me that royalty isn't about power. It's about serving. About seeing value where others see weakness. About loving without conditions. He knelt then, as he had 2 years ago in front of her old pack. But now there was no audience, just them. Nina, my queen, my mate, my heart. He said, eyes shining with emotion. Thank you. For that one bread you shared. For choosing kindness. For choosing me. And for letting me spend every day proving you deserve to be loved. Nina pulled him back up, kissing him with everything she felt. Love. Gratitude. Pure joy. We deserve each other. She whispered. Two souls who found home in each other. And when they returned to the castle, hands entwined, the mark on their necks glowed softly under the moonlight. The discarded Omega had become queen. The lonely king had found his mate. And together, they'd created not just a kingdom, but a home. A place where everyone, weak, strong, rich, poor, was valued. Because Nina knew, deep in her soul, a truth she'd never forget. Kindness was the greatest strength. Compassion was the greatest power. And love, true love, freely chosen, was the only magic that truly mattered. The end. So, you who listened all the way to the end, which part touched your heart most deeply? Was it Nina's humiliation at the beginning, when she was considered worthless? The moment when Dante revealed himself as king? The brutal fight against Mikhail? Or maybe the ending, when they completed the bond and created a home full of love? The law of pure gift, this magical element where selfless generosity reveals soulmates, was something unique to this story. And I wonder, do you believe in this kind of magic? That our actions reveal who we truly are? If this story moved you, leave your comment. And if you want more stories like this, with alpha kings, rejected omegas who discover their worth, and endings that make your heart squeeze with happiness, let me know. Because there are thousands of stories waiting to be told, and each one carries the same message. You are more than they said. You deserve love, and your happy ending is waiting. Until the next story, my wolves.